Good morning, and thank you for joining us. My name is Courtney Yaki, and I am with the F&M Regional Growth Alliance, and here today representing the Business Navigator Alliance of South Central and Southeastern Illinois. Today, we have an excellent presentation in store for you. We'll be discussing hempcrete. Now, if you're not familiar, this is a product derived from hemp, lime, and water that can be used in home building. And you might say, why are we diving into this topic and talking about this today? Well, residential development is a big need in our communities, and most certainly as community leaders, business leaders, stakeholders within the area are trying to derive the opportunity to increase residential development, increase that investment in residential development, and ultimately try to get to assist your workforce and try to encourage people to live in our communities. And some of the factors going on now is that who just homes are expensive, and home building, the construction costs are expensive as well, and not able to be affordable for folks. And so try to look at some products that we might be able to introduce into the construction process where we come across hempcrete here, a very interesting thing that might help us drive down the overall cost of what that construction cost would be, and hopefully the cost of what to be able to afford a house. And so today I'm joined by Joshua and Caitlin Blackwell from I Grow Homes in Arcola. Josh and Caitlin have taken a deep dive into growing hemp and how it can be used as a building material in constructing homes. And they're here today to share us what they've discovered and what they're working on. I'm very excited to hear from them. But first and foremost, what is the Business Navigator Alliance of South Central and Southeastern Illinois? Well, we are a six-county regional collaboration who originated from working through a small business community development grant with the state of Illinois. The partners include Rhonda Soggett from Coals Together, Lori Miner from the Sullivan, Illinois Chamber and Economic Development, Risa Shaner from the Crawford County Development Association, Laura Pierce from the Marshall Area Chamber of Commerce, also including from Clark County, the Tom Donahue from the City of Casey, Bob Colvin and Freddie Schmuddy from the Paris Economic Development Corporations, and then myself, Courtney Yaki, with the F&M Regional Growth Alliance. This group is charged with professional outreach and technical assistance for local, state, and federal programs. Our mission is to ensure that small businesses in our region are competitive in applying for necessary resources. And our goal is to position you for success by accelerating business recovery and growth. As you can see from the map on the side of your screen, that's where the Business Navigator Alliance is located. Today's webinar is a set of series of business webinars that we host each month. These webinars are typically on the last Thursday of each month. I realize today's Wednesday. We had to do a little concessions and move it up a day, but please mark your calendars for the last Thursday of the month. You can visit www.ilbusinessnavigators.com and sign up for our newsletter to stay informed. We also host various outreach events, office hours, and offer one-on-one technical assistance. So again, visit IL Business Navigators, that's navigators with an S, to learn more. I will post a recording from today's presentation and additional supportive materials on the website as well. Throughout today's presentation, we may have some questions. Please place your questions in the chat. We'll try to reserve them for the end of the webinar when we enter into the Q&A session. But do throw your questions out in the chat. So up first, we got Josh and Caitlin. Josh and Caitlin are from Douglas County, Illinois, where they've spent a combined total of 30 years in public service, servicing the citizens of Douglas County. Both Josh and Katie come from farm families who have raised traditional corn and soybeans throughout their farming experience. In the fall of 2024, they learned about all the benefits available from farming industrial hemp, and in 2025, they planted a trial crop to determine how it grows on their farm. Josh and Katie's long-term goal of growing industrial hemp is to use some of the materials to produce healthy homes while using the fibers for textiles and bringing the industry to East Central Illinois. By doing so, this will create additional jobs for local residents, additional opportunities for farmers to grow a new rotational crop, and provide healthy, sustainable homes that will be affordable for the working class family. Josh and Katie, are you guys ready?
Yeah, we are. Thanks a lot, Courtney. Yes. Thank you. Yeah, so we're here to talk to you about building the future sustainable communities. As Courtney mentioned, we started our company back in 2025 after discovering some of the benefits of hemp. And you can go ahead and go to the next slide. So how did we get here? What actually started was we bought a new bean head, and it said it would harvest hemp. And I thought, well, how does that work? I really didn't know anything about industrial hemp. I knew it had been legalized in 2018 from the Farm Bill, but that was basically it. And so I got on YouTube, of all places, and watched a video on it. I thought, well, that's somewhat interesting. In the next video, recommended video, there was Hempcrete. It was a video called The Harmless House, and it was specifically about this house being built in Canada with hempcrete, and I had no idea what they were talking about. So I spent about 15 minutes watching this video and was just blown away by all of the benefits that they listed with a home like this. And so that kind of started us on a journey where we started to explore, what is industrial hemp and how do we farm it? So you can go to the next slide. So industrial hemp is cannabis sativa L, and the L stands for low THC. In other words, it's non-psychoactive. You'll hear a lot of, information on 0.3%, and that's what hemp distinguishes hemp from marijuana. So hemp is less than 0.3% THC, and it's actually grown for three different reasons. It's grown for fiber, which is the exterior part of the plant. It's grown for hurd, which is the woody core, and that's on the inside. And then it's also grown for seed. You can go to the next slide. So some of those differences between hemp versus marijuana is, again, the THC content. It also has to do with the way you farm it, as well as the regulation differences. So farming is going to be a little bit different. In industrial hemp, we want the seed and the stalk, where in marijuana farming, they're looking for the flower. There's also differences with how it's regulated at the state and federal level. And then, of course, your down use, processes, their down uses of those materials are going to be different. You can go to the next slide. So why is hemp unique? So it can grow from anywhere from 90 to 120 days. And actually, when we grew our crop, it was actually running about 75 days. So what that means, at least in Illinois, is you have that potential for potentially two crops. The further south you go, like Louisiana, Florida, you could see maybe three crops down there because of the growing season. But around here, you could potentially plant in the spring like a traditional corn or soybean, harvest it. And then in Germany, they've actually tried doing winter harvest, where you plant in the fall and you let the crop basically rot or die out in the field, and then you harvest it in the spring. But some of the advantages is it actually improves soil health. So there are some studies that have been done where they've used hemp to remediate soil and get the forever chemicals out of it, and it's been very successful in doing that. It also requires fewer inputs than cotton or timber, and it produces a high amount of biomass. So to give you an idea, if 1 acre of hemp can produce the same amount of paper as 4 acres of trees. So you're obviously increasing, what you can do with that particular crop. You can go to the next slide. So my next question was, well, what's in it for the farmer? And so one of the things I did is I went to the University of Illinois Hemp Science Center, which is in Champaign-Urbana, and it's ran by Dr. D.K. Lee. And he does every year, he'll do an annual event where anyone can come, any farmer or processor or just anyone curious can come and look and see what the research they're doing at the University of Illinois. And so my wife and I did that. And one of the companies we met was called KIFCure, and they were actually handing out this flyer where they took some data from a 2024 report from the U of I and compared it for soybean farmers, corn farmers, and hemp farmers. And as you can see at the bottom, your expected returns are almost double that of soybeans. So that also was very interesting for me. The picture there on the right is actually the hemp, the industrial hemp fiber that we grew last year. It was over 15 foot tall, and that again took 75 days to grow. So you can go to the next slide. So what are some use cases of hemp? There's textiles. Textiles is huge. Patagonia, for example, they have a whole line that is dedicated to hemp. The shoes that I'm currently wearing are called 8,000 Kicks, and they're 100% hemp fiber. There's bioplastics. BMW uses a hemp bioplastic in some of their fenders. Obviously, there's paper out of it. There's animal bedding. So you see a really big market for animal bedding for the herd in like horse farms and chicken coops. There's food products. So the hemp seeds, actually the hemp hearts rather, those are full of omega-3 and omega-6 fatty acids, which are good. They're really good to throw in like smoothies, for example. Obviously, there's construction materials, there's some medicines, which I'll talk about in the next slide, and there's biofuel. You can go to the next slide. So recently, there was a study conducted by the University of Illinois as well as the USDA, where they took hemp roots and they analyzed some of the molecules that are in there. And what they found is that there are some molecules present in hemp roots that actually show a moderate activity in killing pediatric cancer cells in the lab setting, which to me is remarkable. Illinois, we have over 23 million acres of farmland currently in production. To think about, some of that acreage could be used to help develop this medicine that could help fight childhood cancer is pretty remarkable. And so we're always learning stuff about this plant and things that we don't know. And you can go to the next slide. So why we see construction as the biggest opportunity here locally, number one is construction requires a massive amount of materials. You also have a high carbon footprint. So if you're, importing your gypsum, your drywall from out of state, or you're importing your insulation from out of state, that's going to create an issue. Just the insulation being manufactured can be a high carbon industry. Hemp can actually replace the insulation in your home, as well as some concrete components. There's something called enforced fiber that you can add to concrete, which is basically the exterior part of the plant. But what it does is it reduces your concrete shrinkage while also increasing the strength of the concrete itself. So you can replace wood products too. There's a company in Kentucky called Hempwood out of Murray, Kentucky. They're the number one fastest growing company in the state of Kentucky over the last 5 years. They've grown over 500%. But they make flooring out of hemp, and it's totally non-toxic. They use a soy-based resin to put it together. They also make, cabinets and tables. And then we have issues with housing affordability. And I'll let Katie kind of talk about that. She's got more experience on the real estate side.
Yeah. So basically, when Josh got the new bean head and it led him to hemp, he basically thought of me and my love for houses and redoing houses, especially old houses. So one thing led to another, and I decided that I needed to get into real estate to get in with like-minded individuals who have the same sort of, goals when it comes to the housing industry. I've only been doing it for since August of last year, but what I've realized is buyers, try to buy homes that they believe are, in good condition and are going to be good for them, throughout the life of the home. But what I've come to realize through all of these home inspections that I've read through is we're using materials that harbor, mold and bacteria and basically give a good environment for all of these bad things that we shouldn't be breathing are literally growing on the materials that we're using. So using hemp as a material for building houses just kind of makes sense. It's something that we can grow, we can process, and then we can produce many, many materials and products here that we haven't been able to do because it was illegal for so long. So I think we're behind the curve on when it comes to the things that we can be doing with hemp. But
as far as affordability too, I think the more people that are farming it, the more material we have access to, right? So that's going to then drive the cost down for homeowners, making the homeownership, a lot less, but also giving them a more high performing material that is a healthier environment for them. And I think another issue that we face is just lack of inventory, right?
Yeah. So there's a huge gap in the inventory. There's the houses that, a lot of people can't afford. And then there's the houses that need work. And unfortunately, the houses that need work are the ones that, have had the deferred maintenance and, has the mold and the mildew growth and all of the things that aren't good for us. So that's kind of where we see hemp, being introduced and originally or starting off in remodeling homes. So basically we think that this is a great product and it will speak for itself.
Yeah. Can you go to the next slide for me, Courtney? So what is hempcrete? It's this is the beautiful part about this is it's very simple. It's hemp hurd, again, the internal part of the plant. It's a lime binder and it's water. Those are three materials, and that's all you need to make your actual wall unit. Now, it is not structural, so you do have to use it with a traditional frame. But the nice thing about it is it acts as your interior and your exterior wall. And there's a recent article I read, and I just threw in a quote here. So over time, the lime reacts with carbon dioxide in the air, undergoing a carbonation process that gradually converts the binder into calcium carbonate stone. And what's interesting about that is the research has shown that once hempcrete is fully cured, it's actually 7 times stronger than concrete. But because you have so much mass there, it's also 3 times more elastic. So what that means for a homeowner is it's less susceptible to damage from natural events like a tornado or an earthquake. You can go to the next slide. So how it works, it acts as an insulation. Essentially, what you do is you pack the frame and you do both sides of it. And what that creates is a thermal envelope for the house. So you don't have the potential for energy loss where, it might go through if you don't have insulation just perfectly in there, you could have a gap where you're going to have, a leak. The other thing it does is it actually self-regulates temperature and humidity inside the home, which is something that we don't normally do now. You can go to the next slide. So some key insights from research is they found that hempcrete has low thermal conductivity, which basically means your heat is moving slower throughout the house. That makes it perform as a high quality insulation. Again, because if you lose power, for example, right now in a traditional home, after a few hours, especially in the winter, for example, your house is going to get a lot colder. Where here, your wall is going to maintain a lot of that heat. And so you're actually going to, stay warmer longer. You can go to the next slide. So some energy savings that have been documented. There's this article out here that's shown they did this research in I believe over in Europe. But what they found is that a hempcrete home used up to 50% less energy than a traditional home. And actually, Katie and I were out in Pennsylvania last week attending a workshop. And at the end of that, we got to tour a home that had been completed with hempcrete. And they only had 8-inch thick walls there. But it was 95 degrees outside and it was 78 degrees inside that home. And this home still doesn't have an air conditioner. And it was finished with hempcrete in 2022. They found that they don't really need one. And because of that, their most recent energy bill was $11 for the entire month. And they do have some rooftop solar, but still they were able to basically totally eliminate their energy bill. You can go to the next slide. So one of the things that really drew me to hempcrete was its fire resistance. When I first heard this, I actually didn't believe it. And of course, thanks to YouTube and people out there posting content, you can get on there and actually prove that this is correct. So in ASTM testing, what they did is they actually took a hempcrete wall. They took a torch and heated it to 1700 degrees and placed it within 12 inches of the wall. And they left it there for an hour. At the end of that hour, you can put your hand on the other side of that wall, and it didn't even raise the ambient temperature. It wouldn't burn you. The fire didn't spread. And in this picture here, what this is actually a fire test done in France, where they took a bunch of pallets and did the same thing. They torched the pallets, and the structure was still there at the end of it. And so, from a homeowner's point of view, especially if you're in an area like California where you're susceptible to wildfires, this is a potential solution for that. You can go to the next slide. I will say too, from a first responder point of view, the other advantage from a first responder point of view is that if they were to respond to a home fire that had hempcrete, there's only three components in that wall. They're not burning plastic. It's just burning hemp essentially. But one of the other things that advantages of hemp is that it can actually be resistant to mold and pests. And I again used this article as a quote that I think is relevant here. So the material also exhibits specific moisture handling characteristics known as hygroscopic behavior. The open pore structure allows the walls to absorb water vapor from indoor spaces during periods of high humidity and release it when the air becomes dry. This breathability prevents the accumulation of liquid water inside the wall assembly. By eliminating trapped moisture, the chemical composition of lime binder maintains a high pH level that naturally resists the growth of mold, and it deters insect infestations. The other thing is again, because the lime binder is still ingesting carbon, that's hardening. And where I'm at out in the country, we deal with field mice. Well, field mice aren't going to be able to chew through 12 inches of this stuff, right? And so you're automatically eliminating the problem. But also because those walls do breathe, again, you're reducing the risk for having mold in your home. So you can go to the next slide. What that means is that you have a more healthier living environment. One of the things we're not studying is how the home plays a role in our overall health. We spend over 80% of our life in a home, but yet we have materials that have all kinds of toxic chemicals that were used in the creation of them. The other thing it does is if you live in a city, hempcrete actually has sound dampening properties, so you're less susceptible to hearing trains or traffic noise. And then if you have a multifamily residential house where maybe you share a wall with hempcrete, you're not going to hear your neighbor, which is the nice thing, right? So those are some advantages when it comes to living quality. You can go to the next slide. Some other thing is hemp material it's carbon negative. So hemp is always absorbing CO2 as it grows. And then once we actually decorticate it and put it in the wall, as I mentioned, the lime binder kind of takes over and it starts to ingest carbon dioxide. And again, I threw in this quote. It shows that basically the result of this is that you can have a thermal insulation capacity that can be up to 15 times greater than concrete, which again reinforces what we're saying, that you're reducing your actual energy costs and increasing the livability of the home. So how do we build this stuff? You can go to the next slide. So there's several ways in which you can use hempcrete, and the most available and really the kind that Katie and I started with was called cast in place. And what that is you have a traditional stick frame. You take basically a form, which here they're using OSB. You take your hempcrete mixture and you pour it in that form. And from there, you tamp it down and you create basically a thermal envelope, like a thermal pocket. And you do that all the way around the house and you have to keep building it up. It's the cheapest way because if you have a lot of family, you can get together and you can do it on your own. But otherwise, if you're hiring or contracting someone out to do it, that's a lot of labor. And so that can increase the cost. But another solution to that is the spray method. There's something called the Erizi system. There's a company named Americhamp that's done over 50 homes, actually close to 60 homes now, using a system called Erizi, which allows them to spray in insulation. And in fact, the workshop that we were attending was this. Katie and I just became certified installers and actually just purchased that system. So we're the only builder in the state of Illinois that actually has this ability now. You can go to the next slide. There's also precast panels. So one downfall of hempcrete is our ability to build is limited by the environment. So I can't be in Illinois in January putting a hempcrete home up using cast in place or spray on necessarily. You have to have the temperature over a certain degrees for the mixture to work correctly. But a way to combat that is to do something called structural insulated panels, where we can work in the winter in a controlled environment, prefab these panels, and then from there in the spring go and put up multiple houses in the matter of a few days. And so we're given the ability of someone to really design their house. We can panelize it and then build that for them and put it up in a lot quicker time frame. There's also blocks. So there's a company called Renewabuild that just started in Iowa that licensed some technology out of Canada where they have this block here that's on the screen. And what the green thing is it's a structural insert. And what it does is it allows the hempcrete structure to become an actual structural home. And the nice thing is again, you can cut that to size and it's made directly in Iowa. You can go to the next slide. And then last, we have 3D printing. So 3D printing has been gaining popularity in places like Australia and Europe. I know a few years ago, Texas A&M was given a grant from the government to research hempcrete and 3D printing. I do see this as a way long term that we can really reduce the amount of home costs by being able to use something like this. You're getting all of the exact same benefits of hempcrete. And it's just in a little bit of a quicker or different style of manufacturing. So you can go to the next slide. What real world applications do we see here? Again, we're seeing these currently being used in single family homes. There's also multifamily housing being used. There's apartments going up in Europe, for example, that are in this. In the United States, there's over 120 hempcrete homes. But what we see locally is the need to retrofit homes, like Katie mentioned. There's some organizations out there, some municipalities that are trying to work together to try and resolve this problem. And home ownership is expensive, and importing materials, unfortunately, are still expensive. Being able to then grow the materials we need here locally and then rehab something locally is reducing our overall costs, right? Which in turn should be transferred to the new homeowner, where they're getting basically a home that has good bones, that's been completely restructured, and is a much healthier environment. You can go to the next slide. So what's that mean from an economic opportunity point of view? I think for Illinois, that means there's more farming opportunities. We're not the only people growing hemp, but there's a very few amount of us here in Illinois, and we need more farmers to do it. But in order to do that, we also have to create, some downline markets for it. This year, we just got our first contract to grow hemp grain. So I can tell you there are contracts out there. But that's only half the thing. If we're growing grain, we're harvesting the top half of the plant, but I still need a market for the bottom half. And that's where I think the homes can come into play here. This is an opportunity for farmers to really throw in a rotational crop that is not going to, put their farmland in a disarray. The other thing is there's an opportunity for processing jobs to really make this scalable and to make it affordable. We need more processors. Right now in Illinois, we only have one processor, and it's called Tiger Fiber. It's down by St. Louis. To really to make this feasible, you need a processing center about every 100 miles. That's going to be good for the farmer, especially with $6 diesel fuel that we have right now. If you're having to drive less than 100 miles versus 150, 200, that's going to help. Ideally, we'd have it even closer. But then the other thing is as more homes are made out of hempcrete, you're going to see an increase in the need for construction jobs, right? Part of what our solution is to provide workforce development opportunities to teach people how to grow this and how to build with it. Because, we can't do it all, but we see that the value in getting others involved. You can go to the next slide. And part of that value is the environmental impact it would have. If you think about the amount of carbon dioxide we're ingesting with hemp that's not getting in the atmosphere, that's good for future generations, right? The other thing is we're not wasting any part of the plant. We're using every single component of that plant for a reason. And hemp itself requires less energy to actually grow. So again, we're reducing our overall impact on the environment, which for me, as a lifelong farmer, is very important. So you can go to the next slide. So why this matters for Illinois? Well, Illinois has obviously a strong agricultural base. As I mentioned, we have currently over 23 million acres of farmland that's currently in production. And if we planted even 10% of that in hemp, that's enough material for over 200,000 homes annually. And to give you an idea, just on my own property, if we planted it in hemp, we'd have enough for over 70 homes, but we'd also have about 1 million pounds of fiber left over. And that fiber can then be turned into, again, clothes, ropes, plastics, a variety of things. But what I see is it's the ability for us to start trying to work with local community leaders to build, to revitalize our communities and actually build something for people, right? You can go to the next slide. As I mentioned, and this has been pretty evident, I think, throughout our presentation, but our vision is to have local hemp producing local homes. It's a closed system. It's something that provides local jobs. It also helps local farmers, right? And we're also reducing our need for energy. I think as the United States continues to progress, as we continue to hear more about AI, I think you're going to see energy bills continue to rise to try and feed that demand as well as other things. And we have to get smart about how we're living as a society. And if I can build a home that I've, again, grown locally here that's less susceptible to natural disaster, that requires less energy, right? I'm thinking long term here. I'm thinking for the future. And to me, we don't know what's going to be in store in 20 years. So I'd rather have that, that sense of security. You can go to the next slide. So your role here, the viewers on the call here, if you're a farmer, I would highly encourage you to grow hemp. If you don't know where to go, talk with the University of Illinois, the hemp science program there. There's also a program at Southern Illinois University, Carbondale. They want to run a really good program down there as well. both those universities are eager to talk and work with farmers. If you're an investor, consider funding a project that's hemp related. There's a lot of things out there, a lot of businesses that are starting up, like-minded individuals across the United States trying to do the exact same thing that we are. And we're seeing impacts in communities as a result of people getting behind them. If you're a citizen, I would consider building a home out of hemp. You're putting a natural material into your wall that is going to pay you downline benefits and performs as a high performance insulation, which is something you don't see now with traditional construction. And then if you're an official, you need to work with farmers and people like myself on adjusting some of the laws. Just to give you an example, one downfall of farming hemp is that I have to have a grower's license, but then for me to process it, I have to have a whole separate license to process it. And there's some other ways in which I think we can make some changes with regard to testing requirements. So there are some ways in which we can improve to make this a little bit more farmer friendly and business oriented. But reach out and don't be afraid to have this conversation. You can go to the next slide. Really, I think the last thing is just to tell you what our mission statement is. So, our mission is to revitalize communities by transforming industrial hemp into affordable, resilient housing, skilled workforce opportunities, and regenerative industries that create lasting economic and environmental impact. And, our values to us are very important. Obviously, we believe in family. We believe in our faith in God. We believe in integrity. Obviously, we believe in community. We spent the last combined 30 years working in law enforcement to try and help our community members. And we always put service before ourselves, right? We expect and demand accountability, and we try to strive for excellence in all we do. So I think that's a good presentation to give you an idea of what we're trying to do here locally. And one thing I will say is we haven't been alone in this process. We have reached out to other local community members, as well as the Small Business Development Center in Mattoon. And actually, we're fortunate enough to be hooked up with a guy named Mick Howery, who is on this call as well. And since we've been talking to Mick, it's like we've gone in turbo drive. He's been introducing us to all these people, and just my head is spinning with the amount of resources that they've been able to provide for us. So I guess I would pass it on to Mick to maybe pass along some of the things that the Small Business Development Center can offer other businesses that are growing in situations like ours.
That's excellent, Josh. Excellent. And Joshua and Caitlin, tremendous presentation. Wow. Thank you for educating us, not just on hemp, but hempcrete as a whole. And you can really tell that you guys are passionate about your community and passionate about growing homes. And so, I mean, that was a info-packed presentation. I took a lot of notes. I know everybody that's listening is taking notes as well. If you have any questions, throw them in the chat. We've got some comments. We've got some questions in the chat. Heather, I see you raised your hand. Unfortunately, not able to unmute you just with the platform that we have. But if you've got a comment or any questions, please throw it in the chat. And we're going to continue on. As Josh had noted, we have Mick with us today as well from the SBDC there in Mattoon. So Mick Howery is a graduate of Arcola High School and currently serves as a senior business advisor at the Small Business Development Center at Eastern Illinois University. He is also the executive director of the Arcola Chamber of Commerce and president of the Arcola Rotary Club. With more than 50 years of business experience, Mick has started and successfully sold 4 businesses and held leadership positions with national and international firms. He has also served as an adjunct professor of business and marketing for 17 years. Mick holds an MBA from Lindenwood University and remains actively involved in numerous charitable and community organizations. Mick, are you ready to present, sir?
Yes, sir, I am, but it's really hard to follow those kind words from Caitlin and Josh and that very glowing introduction. But thank you. Yes, I'll pick it up from here. First, I'll thank Courtney for arranging this and coordinating and actually helping us do this webinar today. So thank you. Thank you to the Blackwells, who I've had a great opportunity to work with for over a year now, and having known the family for quite a while here in this area, it's really been a pleasure to work with them. the Small Business Development Center, which you're looking at on your screen there, is at EIU, which is where I work part-time, along with Amy and CJ and others. We do work with small businesses, and that's why I'm involved directly with Caitlin and Josh. But I was in an economic development meeting with Courtney and several others not long ago. And I think what led to this particular webinar is that I mentioned, as I've said before, that I'm high on hemp. And although I got a lot of strange looks from the audience, Courtney said, we should talk about that. And it led to some further discussions, and that led to us being on this webinar. Of course, I meant high on hemp in a positive way, not the addictive way, because that's what the hemp is that we talk about here. Um, Arcola has long been known as the broom corn capital of the world, and my vision is, along with the Blackwells, it'll be the hemp capital of the world as well. A lot of the things that I do are outreach related, so I get to travel for 12 counties for Small Business Development Center and equal or greater number of counties with the economic development and with the Rotary Club. So there's a lot of things that I like about what was said today, many, many, many things. But the return on investment and the multi-crop prospect of hemp is really exciting to me. The treatment of the soil, which Josh talks about, it's good for the soil, the environment. Housing is much needed in all of our communities, which we all know about. Josh and Caitlin have talked to me about the advantage even for the government to build with hemp. And I have a story from Champaign County from several years ago where they built a fabulous new nursing home for $26 million. And within months, they had to go in and remediate mold that was growing inside of the nursing home for the tune of $6 million. That wouldn't likely happen if you used hemp as your product. So there are lots of stories like that, and Josh and Caitlin have shared them with me. And so I'm all in on hemp, to be honest with you. And as part of my job with outreach, I talk to a lot of people about this. The services that we provide at Small Business Development Center, in general, are these things. We're no cost and no obligation. All you need to do is register with us at EIU SBDC, and we provide these things to you at your convenience at no cost. Primarily anything related to business will help you get started if you're an entrepreneur. My preference is to get with you before you start your business because there are a lot of things that, as an entrepreneur, you haven't thought of yet, that we can help you and we can guide you. And we just had a Vision to Venture class here in Arcola that Caitlin and Josh attended. And it turns out that out of the 14 entrepreneurs, some of them didn't want to be entrepreneurs after they went through the class. And that's really a good thing because we help them avoid the mistakes that you can make. But you can look on the screen here, and these are the things that we do. And again, at no cost, with no obligation. So if you're thinking about starting a business, or if you're in business and you've run into some difficult situations, call on us at Small Business Development Center, and we'll come to you, or you can come to us, and we'll have other webinars and things of that sort, and you can learn more about us and what we'll do for you. That's how you reach us, or if you want to you can contact me at the Chamber of Commerce in Arcola and leave a message for me, and that's a good way for me to get back to you as well. So I'll conclude with that. I had a few minutes, and thank you for taking the time to listen to me. And Josh and Caitlin, thank you for the shout out. I appreciate that. Thanks, Courtney.
Excellent, excellent. Thank you, Mick, for telling us what the SBDC does. Most certainly an invaluable resource, not just for inspiring entrepreneurs and business startups, but existing business owners as well. And for free of cost business advice and being able to tap into the SBDC network throughout the state of Illinois as a whole, just a significant resource, and hopefully something that if you've not tapped into them already, you'll reach out and to tap in. And whether it's Amy, CJ, Mick here in South Central, Southeastern Illinois, or throughout the state as a whole, they'll help get you connected with whoever's represented in your area too. So with that, we're going to continue on, and we are going to dive into the Q&A session of this. If you have any questions, please throw them in the chat, and we will get them answered. I see quite a few in here, and I've got quite a few questions myself. So excited here to dive into it. But I'm blown away. Great presentation today, Joshua and Caitlin. Terrific. And just to kind of get us started, and maybe to transition off the SBDC and then back into hemp. You noted a few good things about working with the SBDC. Is there anything else you would like to to note, or what's the one thing that when you got a chance to work with Mick, you said, God, that was excellent, that was awesome. What is something in there? I'll put you on the hot seat a little bit, on the spot here.
Yeah. Well, number one, it's his enthusiasm, right? He's high on hemp, right? I mean, how can you not be around that enthusiasm? But what I would say is his experience, his knowledge, and then his amount of network, right? He has an extensive background that is advantageous for people like myself. He was a university professor, right? Successful businessman himself. And so we get that ability of just having that knowledge, right? But then the fact, as he mentioned, he's in 12 counties. And so he knows me as well as 1,000 other people. And so his memory is great. And he says, I know a guy, let me get you in touch with him. And so, being able to just have that resource and make those connections is paramount, especially when you're trying to start a business.
Perfect. Well, hey, to get us started, I'm looking in the chat, and one of my questions too. Lindsay had noted a question: could hempcrete help mitigate existing mold issues? And one of my questions was just, and you touched on, but the overall benefit of using hempcrete in a home building process. So maybe touch on, again, at a high level, the overall benefits to it, and then will it help mitigate existing mold issues?
So existing mold issues, no, those would have to be mitigated now, right? And that's the thing with hempcrete, is as long as it's cured properly, it is mold resistant. It's less likely to form because the material breathes. So it's expelling that humidity that breeds the mold. So can it mitigate current? No, but it can in the future can help prevent it from growing. And as Mick had mentioned, this has applicability for taxpayers too, from a government point of view. So, jails across the state of Illinois are sometimes sued because they get black mold in the jail. And if that causes a tort liability, if that causes the county to have to pay out, that's taxpayer money that's being put in that person's hands. And, if a county were able to build out a hempcrete, you're eliminating that tort altogether, right? So that's a benefit of it. Did you have something you wanted to say?
Yeah, I guess to answer Lindsay's question a little bit better, the use of hempcrete is during the building process.
Yes.
So it's not something that can be, just added to a home. It's not a treatment plan for mold. It would have to be when you're ready to insulate your walls.
Yeah.
So either it's a new build or it's a remodel.
And that's the thing. We'd have to completely gut the home, right, to do it. The other thing is we don't have to do the home ourselves because we have this Arisi machine. We can subcontract. So if you're working with, Curry Construction or Drake Homes or, Stanfield Construction or whoever it is, and you want to try and explore this as an alternative to, your traditional pink insulation, call us. We can work with your general contractor. And in fact, America's shown that's what they've done is they've done over 50 homes where they've worked with other contractors to help provide that hempcrete installation.
Yeah.
Perfect. And so I would imagine if there is a mold issue, there's nothing to, you'll have to get that taken care of. But if it is tearing down drywalls and pulling out all the insulation and getting the mold out of there, at that point, possibly there's the opportunity to come back with hempcrete or something to that degree to help mitigate future issues. But if you already have mold, it won't remove it. But definitely think ahead of time, something to be able to utilize to help prevent that as a whole. So go ahead. Did you have another
point? One thing I want to add too, just somewhat off topic, but relevant to hempcrete is, we can also add it to like brick buildings, for example. So if you have a brick home and you needed extra insulation, this actually works great on spraying directly onto the brick.
Oh, wow.
So we can actually add up to 3 inches of hempcrete to an existing brick structure without having to do any sort of framing or support for it.
Tremendous. Had another question come in the chat. Are you guys members of the Illinois Hemp Growers Association?
We are, we are. Yeah, Rachel is. She's a powerhouse for Illinois hemp growers. She's done a lot legislatively to help, get hemp on the map in Illinois, and has been working pretty heavily with one of our state reps too. So we are members and proud to support them.
Very good. Very good. Any other associations or memberships that
Yeah.
you have specific to hemp that people may be
Yeah.
interested in?
So we're also a member of the U.S. Hemp Builders Association. So there's other hemp builders like myself that all have a part of association, and they're actually the driving force behind getting hempcrete into the International Residential Code Book. And so this is an accepted form of construction that is there are codes that you have to follow as a builder. This isn't just us out here winging it to try and figure it out. There are an actual internationally approved set of regulations we follow. So, but that the USHBA is an organization, and then there's also the International Hemp Builders Association. That's another great organization.
Very good, very good. And just to extend upon your comment, I took notes during our conversations leading up to the webinar. I do a little due diligence. We just don't throw these things together. But did see that hempcrete was added to the U.S. building codes in 2024. So relatively new, not a significant amount of age into it, but good to see those regulations in there too. So
yeah.
Thinking towards utilizing towards construction and really what excites most people, I think, towards this product is trying to drive down that cost of home building and the possibility of using an alternative product in that process to hopefully the end product, that home, is more affordable for the user. And so for you guys' perspective, and you've done a deep dive into hemp and hempcrete, and you're growing it, you're utilizing it as a product. What do you see as the biggest barriers to scaling industrial hemp in Illinois right now?
Yeah, right now is definitely going to be processing. I think we could find farmers, but processing is the biggest bottleneck. Again, as I mentioned, we have over 23 million acres of farmland currently in production, and if we did plant 10% of that, that's over 2 million acres. There's no way in heck we can currently process any of that, even a fraction of that, right? You're looking at right now the ability to process maybe 5,000-6,000 acres. That's it in the state of Illinois. So for us to really scale this and to bring that home ownership cost down, we have to have processing centers. And the advantage of having one is it doesn't just produce one downline stream. A processor can take that plant, and by decorticating it, you're getting the bast fiber, you're getting the hurd, and you're getting micro hurd. Those are three separate revenue streams that can then be put out into the ether to do a variety of other things, right? Yeah. And so really for us to be able to get home ownership costs down and for the people to be able to build their own home, they're going to have the access to farmers and or processors.
And I believe you had noted it'd be nice to have someone within 100 miles for a processor, and most certainly could go out for it. Is for the logistics of this and transporting this product. Is it a heavy product, or is it that you're going to get to the volume before you get your LBs, or what?
Yes.
What's the constraints there?
So it depends
Obviously,
upon where your
fuel prices, but
what's that?
Obviously fuel prices, but aside from that.
Yeah, so it depends upon where you're growing it, but nationally the average was around 3,000 pounds per acre is what you could expect. Now, I will tell you that in Illinois we have great soil, and we blew that out of the water. If you look at the U of I seed trials that they've produced, as well as our one little trial crop, we were producing just a fiber, not a seed, but just a fiber type of hemp. We had about 9,000 pounds per acre. You know what I mean? So that's a significant amount of material that then has to be transported, to wherever it has to be. So if you're towing 30,000 pounds, you know what I mean, and you've got plenty of acreage out there, that's a lot of money, right? So the closer we can bring that processing center, the better it is for the farmer.
Perfect.
Courtney, could I interject just for a second, please?
Sure, go ahead, Nick.
Okay. I'm high on hemp, but there are lots of the return on investment for the farmer is amazing to me that Josh talked about. The housing needs that all of our communities that we all know about, and we talk about in our economic development meetings, that's everywhere. So this is a door opener for that. And investors, if there are any entrepreneurs on this call or people who would ever think about it, existing business owners, but if there are investors out there, we should really talk about this because manufacturing in this area, to go along with what Caitlin and Josh are doing, what an opportunity. We don't want to do 150 miles to St. Louis to get something done that we should be able to do in this general area. What an opportunity for an investor, entrepreneurs to get their foot into something early on
Yeah.
that we all believe is going to be just tremendous for this East Central Illinois or the Midwest or whatever, but long term, something very good. Okay.
Yeah, and if I can speak to that too, just to give you an example, in Douglas County, we have Cap and Gown, right? Herf Jones, they make gowns for for students that are graduating. And wouldn't it be nice if they could source that fiber from right in their backyard?
Mm-hmm.
Or there's CBM Plastics in Chesterville. They're a plastics manufacturer. They've actually had I've had a conversation with them in the past where they were looking for a hemp bioplastic. There's Master Brand Cabinets, which is in Moultrie County. They're a multi-billion-dollar a year cabinet manufacturer that's currently using a wood product. Wouldn't it be nice if they could source the hemp locally, right? Reduce some of that cost. And then we have CHI Overhead Doors. They're a garage door manufacturer. They use a polyurethane insulation. Wouldn't it be nice if they could switch to a healthy, locally grown, insulation? And then you've got Living Brew Company, a worldwide company. I would think that, long term, we could incorporate some sort of hemp byproduct into their, into their operation. But yeah, I think there's ample opportunity out there, and we have ideas for some other things too. Not just this, but there's just so many things you can do. You can even create energy with hemp, and so there's a lot of potential out there. It just takes people that are curious, which is what I was when this all started. I was curious and open-minded. How does my bean head harvest hemp? I've no idea, right? And I just looked at it with an open mind and was like, wow, this is amazing. So that's what I would say to people, is just be curious.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Just to follow up on that, I think one of the things that I've had personally is a little bit of stigma when it comes to, the difference between a cannabis plant and the hemp plant. So Josh has been working with his jobs, his full-time job, to actually come up with some education. Because if you think about it, if we go from growing no hemp in Douglas County to growing,
hundreds of acres,
yeah, like, we're going to have to educate the law enforcement. That's going to cause some people who are curious, like he said. But yeah, I think that's kind of where our life experiences as a whole has sort of maybe led us down this path for a reason. But yeah, that's what I have to say about that.
Perfect. Well, I know the entrepreneur spirit is strong in South Central and Southeastern Illinois. When there's opportunity, someone's going to try to take advantage of it, and rightfully so should. So if you're interested in the industry or just interested in starting a business as a whole, contact the Business Navigator Alliance, contact the SBDCs. We'll work together and do see what we can to help accelerate your growth and get you up and running. So we're getting close to the hour. We've got quite a few questions. We're going to go ahead and continue on. Just wanted to make a quick comment. This is being recorded. The copy of the recording will be sent out next week, along with a copy of the presentations. And I think, Josh, you've got a short video that we'll include in there as well to kind of explain some things and to just further information about hemp and hempcrete as a whole. So we're going to continue on. Just wanted to give the quick, we're almost to an hour. If you've only scheduled an hour for us, we understand. But if you could stay with us, please do. And we'll continue on with some of the questions. So in speaking towards business development, and there was a question in the chat: has there been programs to get contractors to try and use the product? So it's one thing to grow and process, but it's another thing to adaptive use of that product. Are you guys familiar with any programs, state, national, anything to some degree?
Okay. So basically there's no programs or anything that's, driving people to use these products, but I'll try to highlight a company, which I don't know where they're out of, Hempitecture. They have done a really good job. So I'm a self-taught, I do a lot of DIY stuff, right?
Mm-hmm.
So what I've come to realize is I get frustrated when something doesn't work the way it's supposed to, right? You have this and this, and it's supposed to seamlessly go together. And I think that has, with the construction industry, we can't just bring a product to the market and expect people to adapt, right? It's going to have to fit what they're doing currently. And Hempatexture has done a really good job at creating these products that construction companies can just do a plug and play.
Yeah.
So they can replace the fiberglass insulation with insulation made from hemp wool. Carpet underlayment. They're doing a blown-in cellulose, but basically a blown-in type hemp wool. So I would encourage anybody who has any interest in kind of seeing what and not hempcrete alone, but like there's other products that can be introduced right now into building materials.
Yeah. That's great. Yeah. And actually, if you go to our website, there's some links to Hempatexture on there, and you can order their products through our website. We've used them ourselves, hemp wool specifically. It's a great product. But to answer the whole program too, one of the ideas we have is to actually do some workshops to try and bring in local construction companies to give them some education and hands-on experience so they can get an idea of like, will this work for us? Or should we just, look to you maybe to be a subcontractor only? We're not afraid to show people this because at the end of the day, it's helping everyone. So that's one of the ideas is a workshop specifically for construction, but then we'd also like to do one for everyday individuals. That's how we started. And to me, there is something very unique about doing cast in place, especially if you're building it with your family. Between the two of us, we have 4 kids, and I would love nothing more than to build a home using cast in place with my family to see this is something they're going to remember. When I'm dead and gone, they're going to say, I built that house with my dad and my mom. You know what I mean? And to me, that's like a legacy, right? And it's a way of showing freedom too. So I like that.
Very cool. Very cool. So maybe no specific incentive programs current, and maybe there's something related to it when you get into the manufacturing side of it that on the industrial side, but most certainly a lot of resources to be able to tap into, to educate yourself and to help support in either expanding or pivoting your business or starting something new. So question in the chat: what is the difference in labor cost if you build with hempcrete rather than traditional methods?
So we'll talk about just the insulation part of it, right? Because that's what we have control over. But it depends upon, I hate to say it, but it depends upon the way you're doing it. Whether it's built, cast in place, whether that's spray in, whether that's 3D printing or built SIP panels. But just say hypothetically, if we were to do a spray in method, you're looking at around, and it depends upon the size of the wall and some other factors, but around $40 a cubic foot is what you're looking at for something around here. So how that compares with traditional labor costs, I'm not really sure. I hate to tell you, I would say it's probably going to be maybe 10% more than traditional, only because the infrastructure, again, is not in place.
So if additional innovation within this industry potentially be able to drive down that overall cost and to be more cost efficient. So there's some cost savings for the end user, especially with the resistance to mold pest and the energy savings to it. You're growing your own product as well. Potentially some cost savings in the building materials, the labor side. Maybe up there a little bit, but as processes continue to evolve, potentially there are significant cost savings to it.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, like I said, I think as we are able to source material locally and not have to import it from either 120 miles plus away, the next nearest processing facility is over 400 miles away. So if I'm not having to pay trucking costs for thousands and thousands and thousands of pounds of material, and can do it here in Douglas County or Effingham County or Coles County or wherever's closer, that's definitely going to help downline, right?
Yep. Now, I see in the chat, and Josh, during your presentation, you had mentioned U of I and SIU to doing studies for hemp and cannabis science. Brenda should put a link in the chat to Southern Illinois University Cannabis Science Center. So right there in there. Another question here. any thoughts to building a model home in the area to showcase the product in real life?
Yeah,
lots of thoughts.
Yeah, lots of
thoughts.
Years of thoughts about it. Absolutely. But this summer we have a strategic plan, and this summer we're hoping to start executing that first home build. So I just will leave it up to God and see how it goes. But yeah, we definitely this summer we're on track. Let's say this summer to have to start construction on something. So.
And I see one in here more towards the processing facility. And I don't know, just with your knowledge in the industry, if you're able to touch on this, but do you know the site requirements for a processing facility?
So it depends upon really what equipment is in there and what your downline, what your downline goals are, and storage capacity as well. But a minimum of 10,000. Ideally, you want at least a 20,000 square foot facility.
Interstate.
Yeah, and then obviously access to interstates and rail systems.
Awesome. All right, so typical industrial manufacturing work, and obviously to scale on however big the opportunity is. Mick, I see you unmuted stuff. You have anything there, sir?
Yeah. I don't know if our friend Lindsay from Houston, Texas is still on here, but if you're listening to him say warehouses and construction of manufacturing and access to railroads. That's what we've been talking about for a year. So here's an opportunity. I hope you're still with us, but if not, if you'll watch this on the replay, maybe you'll get some ideas from this. Lindsay in Houston, this is for you.
And if you think about it too, if you had, say, a cold storage facility, if that's what you wanted, if you're outfitting it in hempcrete for your insulation, you're again you're better able to self-regulate that temperature, so you're using less energy for your cold storage facility by using hempcrete. So go ahead, Courtney.
So we talked about the processing centers there, the facility there. And this one here more relates to you guys, I think. What kind of equipment or infrastructure would farmers need to transition to hemp production?
Yeah, so that's a great question. It depends upon what they're currently farming. The only thing I have changed in my operation at this point is I added a sickle bar mower. That's basically it. But you farm it traditionally. It depends upon the variety. So if I'm growing it for grain, I would use my combine and my bean head. That's what I'm using to harvest grain. That's the top half of the plant. Then the bottom half, you would harvest it like you would hay. So you can get a sickle bar mower. You can cut that. You let it rut in the field. You turn it with like a rake, and then you bale it. And then it just looks like a giant bale, almost like a hay bale, right? And that's essentially it. You take that bale to the decortication facility, and then they process it. Otherwise, if you aren't farming for grain, it would be the same process. You would cut it. You can use that. You could use a sickle bar mower, but there's actually one out there that's got four or five different levels of sickles, so you can cut it at multiple lengths. But it's the same process. You let it rut, you bale it, and you're good to go.
Perfect. And are you aware if there's been any testing in hempcrete for use on roads?
So not hempcrete itself. Hempcrete traditionally you want it to be above the frost line. There are some exceptions to that where you can do some things, but overall, let's just say for general discussion purposes, you want it above the frost line. But or the snow line? What I would say though is there's a byproduct of hemp being used in road construction, and that's something called graphene. And graphene is a product you can make through several different processes, but it essentially comes through hemp, and that's actually being tested over in the UK right now. They've introduced, I want to say, 30% of graphene into the road construction to see how it works. Yeah. Or that could be incorrect numbers, but I know it's a decent amount of testing. Go ahead.
So to kind of follow up, like with the road question, hemp itself is biodegradable, which is another one of the good qualities about it, right? So you want to keep it off the ground where those microorganisms exist, so you don't have that natural breakdown of the product. But I think if you were to think of something that we could replace, tomorrow in roads, is those walls that they're putting up along interstates.
The sound barriers.
They're putting up those walls to protect the communities around them. And if we started doing it with a material that actually absorbed CO2 and had more noise dampening properties, that's one of those things that we could be doing better.
Yeah, and you brought up a good point. So kind of an easy use case scenario is, Illinois got plenty of roadways, ditches. Why don't you grow a little there? And actually, one of the things we found out when we started our hemp research was in I want to say 23 or 4, I think it was 23 maybe, the city of Decatur got a grant to do a soil reclamation where they dredged Lake Decatur, and they took all of those contents and they put it on a field. And their grant was to plant hemp on it, and they did. It was about 70 acres, and so they planted hemp on it to reclaim the soil. But they also harvested just the grain, but then they torched the rest of the plant because they didn't know what to do with it. But that could have been material that could have been used to rehab at least 7 homes in Decatur. You know what I mean? So that would have been a use case of a local government using resources or land they already have available to then give back to the community, because I'm sure Decatur, like any other city, has got a few houses that could use some TLC, right? And that's a free resource. So,
well, even continuing off of that, let's say a average home, ranch style home, 1,500 square foot, maybe a little bigger, a little smaller. Approximately how many acres does it take of growing hemp to use this process?
Yeah, so when I first started this, what I initially thought was about 10 acres would give you a 1,500 square foot house. I like to, under promise and over deliver. And so, because Illinois is so good, I think we could actually do that in about 5 acres, and really even less depending upon the variety and some other factors. But I like to be very conservative. So I'm just going to say 10 acres will give you a 1,500 square foot house, and then you'll have a bunch of material left over to make curtains with or something. You know what I mean?
Perfect. Well, we got just a few more questions and then we'll button this up. More specific towards construction or what it can be utilized. Would it work as a plaster to resurface interior walls?
That's a great question. So what you actually would want to do to finish the hempcrete structure, what we would recommend is you use the lime plaster, actually. So your house would look kind of like a stucco home or a plaster home, but you could use that both on the interior and exterior. Now, that's not a requirement. You could use, traditional OSB, or you could use traditional siding if you wanted. There's just some ways in which we would have to do the construction process to allow for that accommodation. But yeah, we would definitely recommend. Go ahead.
I think the question was, would it work as a plaster to resurface interior walls? I think that there's been some development with adding some hemp fiber into plaster. Is that correct?
Yeah, there is. That's more of like to treat that. That was to treat for when they're doing drywall. That's what that was.
All right.
Instead of taping, mudding.
Yeah. So, but like Josh is correct. Plaster, yes, that is a part of hempcrete. You would have to, or you would want to, if you would want to do it a certain way to keep, the healthy materials involved.
You can spray into, if you have a plaster and lath, though. If you currently have a plaster and lath home, we can spray directly onto that, and that can technically resurface it for you. And the same thing, as long as we weren't spraying over 3 inches, you could potentially do it without a structure. But depending upon what's going on, there's a lot of different factors. It would just be we'd want to look at the home probably.
Well, and continuing that, and we did have a question towards the spraying of brick, and maybe this, combines into the existing discussion here, is if you do spray brick, how does it affect the structure, and do you have to cover it with another material? So you had noticed you had mentioned 3 inches behind brick, and if you're less than 3 inches, maybe you don't need something structured. Can you elaborate just a little further, please?
Yeah, I think if you're going to spray onto it, I would recommend that you then put plaster on it or cover it in some fashion, right? We would not want to leave it totally exposed, because if you left it totally exposed, you're reducing some of the benefits. For example, the part of the uniqueness of the fire resistance is the lime binder itself and the plaster. So when you're combining those things, you're giving that full thermal envelope that's giving you the best protection possible. So although you could leave it exposed, I would not recommend it because its chances are eventually will degrade and you'll have some issues.
I think if you use to compare it like a cabinet that's made out of like OSB board, we put material on the outside that keeps moisture from getting in to those inner woody particles.
Yep.
The plaster would do the same thing. If you left it untreated, you just have a bunch of tiny little wood particles that are glued together. And as you know, over time, those are going to start to, kind of fall apart. So you definitely would want to do a plaster render over it.
Perfect. And last question, and we'll button this up. What are the expected long-term maintenance costs for hempcrete homes?
Oh, that's a great question. I don't know off the top of my head, to be honest with you. I'd have to look into that. I would say it depends upon how the home is finished. So if you are using plaster, it's like any other traditional home with plaster. There is going to be some maintenance requirements, right? And you get 20 years into it, you may need to do some stuff to it, right? So that could be the case. But also, if you finish it like a traditional home, where say you had traditional siding and you still wanted drywall, at that point, there's really not going to be anything to do because everything is going to be protected, and there's no other maintenance that I could think of that other than what a traditional home would need anyways. Changing air filters and those sorts of things.
Perfect. Well, excellent presentation. Thank you for sharing this information. Mick, you got one thing? Go ahead, sir.
I do. It's a quick one, but I've said I'm high on hemp, and I'll tell you one of the reasons for that is that, as Caitlin and Josh have told me, every part of the hemp stalk, the hemp plant, is usable for something else. There's no waste, there's no throwaway. And the only other time I was experienced with that is I used to be high on chicken because the country's largest chicken producer, grower, was my largest customer back then. And I unfortunately had to go to a chicken processing plant in California and watch chickens being processed. But the moral of this story is every part of a chicken is used for something. Nothing is thrown away. So I'm glad to be associated now with hemp rather than chicken. So thank you guys for bringing me into this.
And
I appreciate it.
Mick, full circle, hemp seed has now been approved for chicken feed. So you can start feeding your chickens with hemp.
Perfect. No, excellent presentation. A heartfelt thank you for educating us, not just on hemp, but hempcrete as a whole. There's a lot of wonderful comments towards your presentation in the chat as well. Hopefully you get a chance to see those. But there again, thank you. And Joshua, Caitlin, and Mick, appreciate you working with these guys and continuing to press forward, and very exciting to see what this industry does and what comes out of all this, and hopefully some more adoption to it and additional innovation into the processing of it, and maybe some economic development and get some new businesses and create some new jobs, and just full circle. I love it.
Absolutely.
It's what we're about for the Business Navigator Alliance, trying to help grow businesses, start businesses, and just to overall do good for South Central and Southeastern Illinois. So thank you for everybody joining us today. We hope you found it informative, enjoyed the presentation. Next month, we don't have a webinar. It's an in-person session. It's going to be on June 18th in Effingham at Kerner Distributors, starting at 11 o'clock. We've got a Illinois Housing Listening Session, working with the Illinois Housing Development Authority, their blueprint housing tour. There again, going to be June 18th. Encourage people to come. There'll be a presentation on the state of the real estate market from a local realtor. IDA, the Illinois Housing Development Authority, is going to dive into what their products and services are, and then some demographic and information data from around the area, and then facilitate a listening discussion. And really want to hear from you for the housing needs and the type of houses that you're looking for, and what's needed for our communities to help grow. And they're putting that together for their master plans to continue to press forward and try to address housing issues here in the state of Illinois. So that's the South Central, Southeastern listening session. There again, June 18th. Not going to be a webinar at the end of the month. We'll come back and catch you in July, but hope everybody can come to it. There is a survey as well for IDA that they have out. So if you can't attend, or even if you do attend, encourage you to fill out that survey. And as part of the materials that we're that we'll put out next week with a copy of the recording of this presentation, copy of the presentation, the slide deck as a whole, the additional materials with the video from Josh, and if they have anything else for us to send out to you. We'll send out a link to that survey, and hopefully you fill out that survey and let them know what we need from housing resources. So big full circle, residential development, most certainly a hot topic in our communities. We want to keep pressing forward. Hope everybody enjoyed today's session. I really enjoyed the webinar. Again, thank you, Caitlin, Joshua, and Mick. Great presentation, wonderful information. Hope everybody has a great rest of your day. Thank you.
Thanks, Courtney. Take care.
Thank you.